Kamala Harris is basically insulting people, intelligence, with this ridiculous "I'm for the people." She's not for the people. She's for Wall Street. And it's independent media's job, and frankly, Bernie Sanders' job, and Tulsi Gabbard's job, to point this out. Bernie can't have another debate where he's just standing on stage and basically letting other people have a food fight. If he does not take on Kamala Harris and this fraudulent persona of for the people and point out who she's taking money from, point out that she did not go after Steve Mnuchin, point out that she's kind of wished she's basically a human seesaw on Medicare for all, well, the corporate media is not going to do it for you, Bernie. I can promise you that. Corporate media is not going to do it for you. You're the only one that could point these things out. And this is how you, quote, woke, get people woke, by pointing out what you see is a basically marketing branding experiment. Kamala Harris is basically a marketing and branding persona. There's nothing there. So let's also take a look. We got our top donors so far. Top donor, the financial law firm, Paul Weiss, etc. Then AT&T, which is the owner of CNN. DLA Piper, another outfit that lobbies and represents Wall Street banks. And to be clear, as Open Secret points out, this table lists the top donors to the candidates in the 2020 cycle. The money came from the organization's PACs, their individual members, employees, or owners, and those individuals' immediate families. So technically, it's a mishmash. Corporate PAC donations, individuals who work for the company, but I tell you, as I always tell you, these donations are not coming from the janitors and the worker bees of these companies. They're coming from the bigwigs at the companies, executives, owners, their spouses, senior management. That's how this works. So, a little bit about Paul Weiss and co, since that's who has donated quite a lot to her. According to the Center for Responsive Politics, which keeps meticulous tabs on political campaign flows, as of this morning, the law firm Paul Weiss, Rick Fund, Wharton, and Garrison, which has represented Citigroup through more than 2 decades of serial fraud charges, is the #1 campaign donor to Kamala Harris. As the center notes, the money isn't coming from the law firm itself, but from its PACs, their individual members, what I just told you. The campaign ad for Harris reads like this: Kamala Harris has spent her entire life defending our American values, from fighting to fix our broken criminal justice system to taking on the Wall Street banks for middle-class homeowners. Kamala has always worked for the people. I just want to add, her taking on fixing the broken criminal justice system. She was against legalizing marijuana years ago. She was against statewide body cameras in California. She was for harsher sentences for nonviolent offenses. I mean, the list goes on, going after single mothers for their kids' truancy. I mean, this is not somebody who's been a godsend for minorities living in California or the rest of the country. But the media fools people into thinking that she is, because this is what the corporate media does. A little bit more on this firm. But here, we are in the early days of the Democratic primary campaign when the big money has not even entered the fray, and Harris already has collected $140,475 from the folks at Paul Weiss. Paul Weiss has offices in New York, Wilmington, Washington, D.C., London, Hong Kong, Beijing, Toronto, and Tokyo. Harris hails from California. Why are Paul Weiss lawyers so interested in financing her campaign? As it turns out, they're not interested at all. Numerous law partners at Paul Weiss are hedging their bets and contributing simultaneously to other Dem presidential candidates. Donations from Paul Weiss also ranked #1 in the presidential campaign of Cory Booker, #3 in the presidential campaign of Kirsten Gillibrand, #6 in the presidential campaign of Mayor Pete, and #9 in Amy Klobuchar. See a bit of a pattern between the people that they're giving money to? Do you sense a pattern who this financial law firm that represents Citigroup and other Wall Street banks? Kirsten Gillibrand? Oh, has she taken a lot of money from Wall Street? Paul Weiss & Co., being her biggest donor, doesn't exactly scream for the people, because the name Paul Weiss has become synonymous with getting serial miscreant megabanks on Wall Street off the hook or bargaining down the charges. In May of this year, we reported that The chief judge of the Federal District Court for the Southern District of New York wrote a decision finding that the U.S. Justice Department had outsourced a criminal investigation to the target of the investigation, Deutsche Bank, and Deutsche Bank's outside law firm, Paul Weiss, Rickfund, Wharton, and Garrison. Major heavy hitters in the Democratic campaign funding frenzy include the chairman of Paul Weiss, Brad Karp. In 2012, we reported on Karp's serial representation of Citigroup, writing as follows. When London-based private equity firm Terra Firma claimed that it had been lied to and defrauded by Citigroup, making it overpay for the purchase of EMI, a British music label, in 2007, Karp and colleagues wrung an 8-0 decision from the jury in favor of Citigroup. Karp was also on hand to bankrupt Italian dairy giant Parmalat, charged Citigroup with fraud. Then there were fraud charges connected to Citigroup's involvement in the collapse of WorldCom and Enron, along with the auction rate securities, rig stock research, and understating its exposure to subprime debt by $39 billion. Karp, and more Karp. The litany of fraud charges against Citigroup, accompanied by the personal get-out-of-jail-free card reliably delivered by Brad Karp, has become so ubiquitous that it raises the obvious question. Is Citigroup the hapless target of a worldwide network of frivolous lawsuit filers, or does Brad Karp have some secret sauce for getting a serial miscreant off the hook? So, I could keep going with the donors, and I got a few more to tell you, but one thing that's so interesting to me, Kamala Harris is trying to brand herself based on being a prosecutor, a former prosecutor, as I can prosecute the case against Donald Trump the best. How are you going to prosecute the case against Donald Trump, who has, I think, the Southern District is investigating his real estate company's money laundering, some of it through Deutsche Bank? How are you going to prosecute Donald Trump, prosecute the case, if you're getting money from the same exact law firms that are representing the same exact scammy banks that are helping Donald Trump? How are you going to prosecute the case if you're saying Donald Trump is giving massive tax cuts to the 1%. You're saying Donald Trump is deregulating. You're saying Donald Trump is a fake populist, but Donald Trump is just going to attack you like he did Hillary Clinton as a shameless puppet for Wall Street. And it's going to play. And by the way, sorry, I know I'm a white guy, so I'm not trying to, speak for African Americans, but who is disproportionately harmed the most by all these Wall Street firms, all these law firms that get Citigroup and others out of jail? Who is hurt the most? If you look it up, African Americans were disproportionately screwed in the 2008 global financial crash. African Americans throughout history, if you know your history, have been hurt the most by federal redlining, by racist mortgage practices from these banks, from Flint to Detroit to Milwaukee to other cities. They purposely created the Federal Housing Authority. This is dating back to the 1940s. Created racist policies and standards for how you had to get what you needed to get a federally insured housing mortgage. And guess what? African Americans and Latinos and minorities were on the outside looking in from banks like the ones Kamala Harris is taking money from. So I'm not criticizing African Americans that like Kamala Harris. What I'm telling African Americans and all voters, white, black, glow in the dark, do your homework. These people are lying to you. She's not for that people. Don't look at what she says in a debate zinger, which is partly in Bernie Sanders' fault by not being more proactive and aggressive in that debate. Look at the money. Follow the money. It's the money, Lebowski. He is not. She is not for the people. She is taking money actively and doing lavish fundraisers actively with the very people screwing black people in South Carolina, screwing black people in the southern states, screwing black people in the Midwest, screwing Latinos in the same places. But corporate media is not going to look into that because they don't give a damn about those people. They give a damn about keeping the status quo. That is why status quo exists. They don't care. They don't care. I also want to point out, not only is she taking money from this firm, we've already gone over, we did a great report a couple weeks ago AT&T, who owns CNN, has given her $53,000, which they should disclose if CNN was an ethical journalistic outfit, but it's not. Then you have DLA Piper, who's a major financial firm, also major lobbyist. Well, who is DLA? Who is DLA Piper? Dick Armey, one of those Tea Party lunatics and former right-wing congressman, client required the bailout that Army's Freedom Works is now protecting. So this is from Think Progress a few years ago. With the Tea Party, Freedom Works is organizing protests against a federal government run amok with economic bailouts. However, Army's lobbying firm represented 3 of the financial behemoths that brought the economy to its knees, necessitating such a widespread government response in the first place. In just the last year, Army's firm, DLA Piper, has represented AIG, Lehman Brothers, who went out of business, Merrill Lynch. The reasons for the lobbying listed on these institutions' disclosure forms range from congressional hearings on financial services crises and tax issues to simply policies affecting securities firms. DLA Piper also represented TARP recipient Discover Financial Services. Let's look at these institutions for a moment. AIG attached a hedge fund to its insurance company and wound up with $40 billion in credit default swaps that it couldn't honor. It then paid out $165 million in bonuses after being kept alive with $170 billion. Merrill Lynch incurred catastrophic losses on subprime mortgages and was rescued by Bank of America, which needed an infusion of taxpayer money. I could go on and on and on. This is who Kamala Harris is taking money from. And you want to know something? Let's keep it real, folks. If this is 2012, and this is Mitt Romney, oh my God, the Democratic Party would be screaming bloody murder. Oh, Mitt Romney, he's a vulture capitalist and he's Gordon Gekko reincarnated. Well, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, they're doing this. They're taking the same money that Mitt Romney took in 2012. Frankly, they're taking the same money that Barack Obama took in 2008. Just most people were not aware. We're not aware. So how is it, Kamala Harris's campaign puts out this thing, oh, look at her record. She's taken it to Wells Fargo in California. Please. She let Steve Mnuchin get out of jail free. He should be in jail right now. And what you are signaling, Kamala Harris, what you are signaling by taking all this money when you say for a debate moment, yeah, I'm going to get rid of private health insurance, and then reverse after your donors tell you knock that shit out, the banks that are giving you the money, they don't want you. They're not going to accept getting rid of Medicare for all, getting rid of private health insurance. They're heavily invested in private health insurance, these banks. They're heavily invested in big pharmaceutical companies. They're not just going to say, oh, you know what? You're right. We think we need that government health care. And if you need any more evidence that Kamala Harris is Hillary Clinton reincarnated, some of the donors I just showed you that are giving to Kamala Harris, big time, here's from 2008. Is Clinton biting's Wall Street hand? As the Democratic presidential primary drags on, Hillary Rodham Clinton has fired warning shots across Wall Street's bow. In a speech in Indiana last week, Mrs. Clinton reportedly said, why don't we hold these Wall Street money grubbers responsible for their role in the recession? Her normally responsive staff took an entire day to respond to the statement, according to the New York Sun. Senator Clinton's team eventually came back and reported that they actually said Wall Street money brokers, not grubbers. When asked by a reporter to square her statements with the fact many of her contributors come from Wall Street and that her daughter Chelsea works at a hedge fund in New York City, a spokesman, Howard Wolfson, said, our supporters aren't the money grubbers. Oh, so Hillary Clinton supporters were the pious men and women of Wall Street who give to the poor and drink organic milk and are not predatory vultures on black people and poor people and those people who can't read the fine print. Her donors, like Kamala Harris donors, they're not the money grubbers. They're not the immoral ones on Wall Street. They're the good corner of Wall Street that does the right thing. You got it? Really? Well, a look at the top 20 Clinton supporters on Open Secrets, a website that tracks political fundraising, reveals that many of the people that work at the investment banks and law firms which help create much of the subprime mess fall on that list. Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan Chase, and Lehman Brothers are all on the top 10. Further down Clinton's list are two other subprime darlings, Merrill Lynch and Bear Stearns. In all, employees at Wall Street banks contributed more than $2.1 million to the senator's presidential campaign. Filling out the top 20 list are the law firms that helped draft the agreements and contracts that supported some of the poisoned leverage buyouts and subprime loans currently vexing Wall Street. Workers at DLA Piper, Kamala Harris's number 3 donor, Skadden, ARP, Slate, Meagher and Flown, Greenberg Traurig, Kirkland and Ellis, and Latham and Watkins. I mean, it's all out there, folks. All you have to do is research. All you have to do is research. And let me tell you something right now. If Kamala Harris is the Democratic nominee, all I got to say about that, iceberg right ahead. Iceberg right ahead. She will not win the presidency. She will lose. She will lose.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.